Hello, Trojan fans. Welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, publisher of USCFootball.com, joined alongside, we call him Triple Double, Connor Morrissette. We're going to talk about some USC football. Of course, the Trojans falling in overtime to TCU in the Alamo Bowl and the transfer portal, that NCAA portal. That thing opened up today at midnight, so we're going to talk about what's going on with USC and that. A lot going on heading into the offseason. Not go the offseason, the momentum we thought that would be happening going into the offseason, so we talked about all of that. Connor was down there in San Antonio at the Riverwalk checking things out, and I just got back from the desert checking things out. We wanted to get a show in here, and it's the first one of the new year, but welcome in, Connor. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Ryan. Happy New Year. We sure have a lot to talk about between that game, the defensive coordinator search, some of the coaching stuff we're hearing with other coaches, and the portal. You can never take a break with college football, that's for sure.
For sure. And we are live on YouTube, so we don't want to take a break here. And we got a bunch of comments and questions. It looked like Joe Boyd in the chat had a whole bunch of questions, and we had a wrong link on there. But I got those questions, Joe. I'll be able to star them and bring them up later in the show. So if you have any questions or comments and stuff, comments I can put up on the screen right away, which I'm doing right now. But you can also put the questions in. I'll star them, and we'll get to those later. You can email us questions that you might have. Podcast@uscfootball.com is our email address. You can call or text us at 424-254-9141. And if you have Apple or Spotify, you can leave us a 5-star rating. We appreciate that. On the Peristyle Podcast. Well, Connor, how's the new year going so far? You all right?
So far, so good. It was nice to spend some time back east where we did that last show. I know you were down in Virginia. I was up in Massachusetts, but good to be back. Didn't have any issues with the day of travel going from Boston to San Antonio to cover that Alamo Bowl game, and got back late on New Year's Eve. So, yeah, doing well. Excited to be back in LA, and let's see what this offseason brings for USC. It's certainly a big one.
It is a big off season, and not the most not the positive start. You know, you want to get out of the gates. You know, if you start your round of golf, you know, hey, you could par the first hole or something. That's nice. You don't want to get a triple bogey on it. I don't know if that's what this was, but it didn't feel very good. And I want to, so we can talk about that. What's going on? The weird stuff I think happened pregame, and maybe we can get into that first, Connor. So on the day before the game, the media heard from Danton Lynn, USC's defensive coordinator. So he was able to speak and didn't really say a lot about his future and stuff. And then, a few hours before the game, we start getting word that he is not going to be calling the defense, that it was going to be Eric Henderson. So what was it like there on the ground, hearing when all this stuff was going on and USC was going to be without their defensive coordinator to start this game?
I think he spoke 2 days before the game, and then all that came out that he was accepting the Penn State job the day before. And it's weird, Ryan, because I feel like USC, they had to know that he was close to, if not likely to, leave for Penn State. So I don't know why the fact that becoming public led to him not calling the last game when he was already there. Like, if you didn't want him to be there because he was linked to Penn State and it looked like he was going to go, why didn't they just not have him come at the beginning? So it sounds like they were upset that it was official the day before the game. Maybe there was a hope that it would be official after the game, and then he could have just called it and life would go on. So maybe the timing of it was a problem for USC. But I heard that I don't think USC was too happy that there was a leak in the building, because Lynn had told the staff that he intended to take the job, and then that got public. And I think that's where everything gets a little wishy-washy, because USC at that point wasn't able to not control the narrative, but just, I don't know if it's the best look if your defensive coordinator is for sure going to Penn State and calls the game. But it kind of seemed like that's what was always going to happen. So if they didn't want him to be there, maybe just don't bring him. I don't know. It's confusing, and the timing certainly wasn't good for USC. And we asked Lincoln Riley about it after the game, and he said, "I'm not going to get into it." But I guess, like, if you if he came and you thought that he was potentially leaving, like, why does it being public change everything? Why couldn't he just call the game? If you didn't want that to happen, maybe leave him at home. I don't know. It's very confusing.
It was very confusing. We don't know all the details yet, and hopefully we can get more of them. But yes, it was like the worst kept secret that he was going to leave for Penn State. So, yeah, it's hard to understand how that ended up coming about. But it wasn't a good start when you bring, if you knew he wasn't going to be there, which very likely wasn't going to be the case, like you said, leave Danton Lynn at home. But to have him address the media, I guess 2 days before the game, not 1 day before the game, and then to move on and not be there on game day, it just was a bad look. And I think, to me, Connor, and this is sort of like a microcosm of the game, that you were able to build some momentum, even though you fell short of your goal of making the college football playoff. It was an opportunity to win 10 games. You did have the number one recruiting class, and it was like, okay, so you got to take care of business in this one. Like, go in with every I dotted, every T crossed. And to start the game with like this weird situation that your defensive coordinator wasn't going to be there, then you just knew there was like, okay, this isn't going to be, some button down. This isn't like, run like the CIA or something. Now it's like, the bad news bears. Like, why don't have your defensive coordinator there? I just felt like it needed to be everything. It was just going to be a tight ship, and it just seemed all loosey-goosey and messy right from the start with that one.
And it was bizarre, too, because we heard that Eric Henderson was doing a lot of leading the defense in the buildup. And so if that was the case, why wasn't he just named the play caller before? I don't know why it all had to happen at the last second. I guess the main question is, why did Lynn go at all? If behind the scenes they were planning for his exit, Henderson was doing a lot more of the defensive coordinator duties, even though Lynn was still there. I guess it's probably hard to tell a guy to go home when he hasn't officially signed to become Penn State's defensive coordinator. That was just announced today, a few days after this game. So maybe there's some legal reason why you can't tell a guy to not coach. But I don't really understand it because, yeah, it certainly wasn't buttoned up when the guy talks 2 days before, then they send him home. Like, that's just bizarre.
Yeah, I tried to talk to sources, and I was kind of getting like, hey, it's a long story. It seemed like there was a lot going on there. I think Danton Lynn's exit probably wasn't the cleanest. Like Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss. You understand he's leaving. Wasn't a clean exit, and now it's funny to see Ole Miss making a run here. My gut is that Danton Lynn's exit wasn't the cleanest either. I'm sure there's some blame to go around, but that wasn't a good start. You don't want to have that as the initial thing because you already had a lot of players opting out of the game, and now you don't have your defensive coordinator. And it was weird, Connor, seeing early on, watching players catch passes that, who is that? Like number 22, like, oh, Corey Sims, we moved from 10, right, to 22. It just seemed like, okay, you didn't have Mekhi Lemon, you didn't have Jacoby Lane, but then you also didn't have Lake McCree and Walker Lyons. And then it just became, okay, you got Tanook Hines and a bunch of guys that you haven't seen very much of before, like a Jalen Richardson. He made a great play. But just if you're a USC fan watching the beginning of that game, Connor, you're like, who are those guys catching passes? It was very strange.
The offense was a complete shell of itself, which was expected with all the opt-outs and the transfer portal guys and the injuries. Remember, Elijah Page was hurt. Killian O'Connor was hurt. So I kind of had this sentiment on instant analysis, and I feel the same way. Like, the loss was bad. USC up by 10 with 7 minutes, maybe even a little bit less in the fourth quarter. You never want to lose a game like that. But, like, if they had won 40-0, I wouldn't have given them too much credit. These games, with all due respect to everyone who got all pissed off, like, they're glorified scrimmages. And the reason USC was throwing to all these guys who didn't play a whole lot is because the best players weren't there. So I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for USC because they should have won that game and they didn't. But, like, it just stinks that they lost it in that way when they had built so much momentum for this offseason and people were excited. Like, really, you had to lose it like that? Because then all the naysayers, all the people who get all mad about this stuff, that is just so much ammunition. And I think you make a good point, Ryan, where remember at the beginning of the game, they're throwing to guys who it's like, oh, who's that? I really liked what I saw from Nella Tapo, the true freshman tight end. He looked good in the practices we were able to watch way back in the summer. He had a few catches, a few mistakes. Like, it stinks that they lost the game in that way, but the team is going to look so different next season. And I just don't think you can have any hard takeaways about, oh, Lincoln Riley, he doesn't know what he's doing because they lost this bowl game. Like, the game doesn't mean a whole lot. The only thing that is good for that game is the young players who didn't get a lot of run during the year getting some real game experience. It stinks that last play happened. And yes, you can get mad at the defense. There was a lot of guys who will be on the team next year. That play stinks. But if USC had everyone and TCU had everyone, USC crushes TCU because TCU wouldn't have been able to stop USC's offense at full strength. So I just have a hard time getting all worked up and getting all bent out of shape about that loss. It's a crappy loss, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I feel like you wanted to see, it's not just the players that are available, but just even the way the coaching staff is going to coach the game, where you finish strong. You wanted to see some of those elements, and this looked like it was more a reverting back to something the way things used to be. Because I do feel that there was a lot of momentum, and you felt like they made some good decisions behind the scenes, and this is the way things were going to go. And then you just come out and just lay an egg like that and let it, to have, first and goal at the 2 and not get a touchdown, and to 3rd and 20 and you give up a 35-yard touchdown. Like, that kind of stuff is like, you can't let that happen. Like, you're right. Like, if you just, the way it went, you could have won the game easily. Didn't even play that well. You had a 10-point lead. To blow it like that at the end, I think is just, it was a lot for USC to bear. And I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be, like some kind of vision into what's going to happen next year. But it's hard to get that bad taste out of your mouth when you are trying to get people to buy in and say, hey, here's this #1 recruiting class coming in, and here's what's going to happen in the portal potentially. That's a tough one to swallow. It just makes the offseason a lot longer and a lot more difficult for a lot of the diehard USC fans to kind of stomach.
And you can get mad at Lincoln Riley for a lot of things, and we're going to get into some of this stuff about, I think, legitimate reasons for being really frustrated with him. And yes, the defense didn't perform very well, but like, I just have a hard time saying like this game is why Lincoln Riley is never going to succeed at USC. I just think that's so unfair when they're down Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, Wayman Jordan, their starting center, Killian O'Connor, their starting left tackle, Elijah Page. Defensively, who are the 3 most important players for USC on defense this year? Kamari Ramsey, Eric Gentry, Bishop Fitzgerald. They all don't play. Like, the fact that, here, I'm going to totally turn heel here. The fact that they were even in that game, I think is a good sign and shows you that the coaching staff, they're not total idiots like a lot of people are saying. Oh, how could they lose to TCU? TCU didn't have its quarterback. Fair. TCU didn't have its #2 receiver, but that was it. The losses are totally uneven. And I can already see the comments. Connor, why are you holding water for Lincoln Riley? Did you go to his Christmas dinner? Blah, blah, blah. We're going to get into some reasons why I think it's fair to be frustrated with him. But like, I don't know. Like this game, it's a real shame that it ended the way it ended. But like, to me, this was all about getting players reps who didn't get reps during the year. It sucks it ended that way. I don't know. Like, I just don't have a huge problem with it. The bowl games are pretty much meaningless.
Yeah. The ratings are actually up for those non-playoff bowl games, which is cool. Playoffs yesterday, kind of 2 duds of a game, and then a really good one at the end, which was kind of nice and surprising one on New Year's Eve with Miami upsetting Ohio State. But yeah, some of the bowl games have been entertaining. The Pop-Tart Bowl, like, that was pretty cool. But yeah, I get it. Like, it's not the end all. If USC won, it's not like, oh, this is going to be a playoff team next year for sure. You just wanted to see some positive momentum, and now you don't have it. So
true, and that I get it. But they had all this positive momentum after the Holiday Bowl. You thought you found your quarterback. You thought you had these great young players who were going to come into their own the next year, and then USC went 6-6 after that. So I think, like, you just gotta just remember the regular season means a ton. Of course, getting into the playoff is the most important thing that you have. USC fell short of that. One glorified scrimmage with a bunch of players who some won't be on the roster next year, some will be buried on the depth chart again. They were playing out of necessity. Like, I just have a hard time saying, oh, Lincoln Riley will never have it work at USC because they lost to TCU in this bowl game. There are other reasons why it might not work with him at USC, but I don't think that's one of them.
What is there concern from you at the number of opt-outs that, TCU, certainly you lose your quarterback, you lose your offensive coordinator. Is it one of those things that, like, hey, USC paid a lot of money for this roster. Why are all these guys not playing? Is there a concern there for you?
Great segue. That is one of my first concerns, where we saw Tennessee. They lost a game, their bowl game, to Illinois, I think. And one of the Tennessee players, he battled through injury to play, and he was asked afterwards, why'd you suit up? You didn't have to. And he said, well, this program has given me everything, and I just felt like I needed to suit up. Every single guy who was 50-50, Ryan, didn't play for USC. So that is not a great sign for the culture. And I get it. Like, I'm not trying to say, oh, those guys really screwed up by not playing. That's just the current climate we're in. But you look on the flip side, TCU only lost its quarterback, and USC lost all of its 50-50 guys. And I think sometimes with USC, like Kamari Ramsey, I think kind of felt like he was doing USC a favor by coming back. And I felt like Jonah Monheim the year before kind of felt like he was doing USC a favor by coming back, even though these guys are getting paid. And then they opt out of the bowl game because they're like, screw this. I just put my body on the line for a whole season. I'm not playing in this game. And I think there's kind of a sentiment there with USC, which doesn't totally exist at other programs. And I think that's what happens when you underachieve a little bit. You have to go out of your way to get the good players to come back. And USC has done that with a couple guys, but then they feel like they don't owe you anything because they're the ones doing you a favor, if that makes sense. So getting out of that cycle is important, and winning games will help with that. I hope that makes sense, but I do think that exists a little bit, where some of these guys are like, well, we did you a favor by playing here, and we're not going to put our bodies on the line one more time.
Yeah. I think I do like what USC's done on the personnel side, and I think this will be like next year's roster will be more of the first one really that has Chad Bowden's fingerprints all over it. But I felt like maybe some of these opt-outs would have been able to be prevented, and so I think it was concerning for me as well. Like, you didn't need this many, and there was Phillip Rivers had a really interesting story or the quote or whatever about, these games aren't meaningless. Like, do you remember playing in your backyard when you were 15 years old and beating your friends and still talking about it and all that stuff like that? There wasn't a Super Bowl on the line, but it meant something. And I think for a lot of these, just how much do you love football? And I think if you're an NFL GM and you're interviewing some of these guys, you like it when you talk to the Tennessee kid that says, hey, I wanted to play, versus someone that didn't. So I know there could be something that actually hurts your draft stock if you keep opting out of these things.
And Riley shoved the culture piece down our throat all year. Well, your culture doesn't look very good when I think the only 50-50 guy who did play was DeCarlos Nicholson. So they went 1 for 12 or whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know. I have a hard time. Like, if the culture was so great, some of those guys probably would have played, right?
No, that was the big concern for me. You're just like, you want some of this stuff I get it, guys aren't playing, but I felt like USC could still play well because we've seen them play without their top 2 wide receivers before. Maybe not the top 2 wide receivers and their top 2 tight ends. Their top 2 safeties we've seen been out. We've seen different guys on the offensive line has been moved around a whole bunch. But, I guess it was fewer guys. This was I think a very different starting group on the offensive line for the bowl game. Alani Noah not being around. So there was more, like, we've seen them go stretches during the season, missing a bunch of key guys and do okay. But I think this was all at once. It made it a little bit more difficult. You had red zone troubles, kicking 4 field goals. Obviously getting stops after the first couple of 3 and outs was an issue. So maybe it was just a combination of just way too many guys who were opting out, which, you could say that's, hey, there's a bunch of guys opting out, but like, why were they? I think that's something that the coaches have to kind of look at and say, what could we have done differently?
And that's why I don't criticize the staff a ton, because it was a shell of itself. on all sides, especially on offense. So I know the board after that game on our message board, it was like you'd think they had just lost to like a playoff game or something. Like I don't know. People really took that one seriously, and I get it. You're a fan. You want to take every game your team plays seriously, but I think there needs to be an understanding of a bowl game. It's just so different from the rest of the games, and
Yeah.
I don't know why people don't kind of grasp that.
Yeah, but culture-wise, I mean, you can give the staff blame for whatever the culture was, or that it didn't work. That we've seen programs where a lot of the guys play, and Big E for SC had a comment in there. Nobody's going to risk injury for glory in the Alamo Bowl, and I think that was going exactly against what Philip Rivers was saying. That it's more about how much do you love football. You get another opportunity to play with your teammates, and it's just there's something to be said for that as opposed to just how much does this mean? Like what does anything mean? You want to go play. This is a bowl game. Your opportunity to get a win and maybe get the team MVP or whatever, set records. Like there's a lot of things there. It's not necessarily just like, well, I don't want to risk injury. Like, well, why would you play at all if you don't want to risk injury ever? Like you play football, there's injury risk. So to me, there's you said it. They talked about the culture being really good. I think if the culture was really good, more people would have played.
Yes, I do have a hard time though criticizing the guys for opting out because, like, for NFL draft reasons and then for injury reasons. I agree with you. If the culture was better, you would hope to have some guys who would say, "Screw that, I'm playing regardless." So I think two things can be true where you would hope the culture would be in a place where more guys would play, but you can also understand why guys don't, because that's just where we are in college football. So when the commenter says no one's going to risk injury for glory in the Alamo Bowl, I get that, but there are some examples across college football of guys choosing to suit up when they didn't necessarily have to, and USC just didn't have any of those guys outside of DeCarlos Nicholson.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. Anything else from the game, Connor, that you want to? You were there. What was it? Yeah. What was it like at the Alamo Bowl? I've been there for the Army game a bunch of times, the high school all-star game. But what was it like down there?
The hospitality was awesome. The venue was really cool. It was very easy to get from the press box to the media room, which I always appreciate. As you know, Ryan, I've gotten lost a couple times at some of these different stadiums. So all that was great. And then the press box was really close to the field. So it was very cool to see the game from a much closer perspective than we're used to. A few more TCU fans than USC fans, but I felt like USC was still well represented considering they were playing in Texas against a team from Texas. People, for the most part, before the game and then during the game, seemed to be in good spirits. I know USC fans weren't happy with how it ended, but in terms of the other bowls that we've been to, this was right up there with this was probably my favorite experience other than the fact that we had to fly instead of drive. The last 2 years we could drive to Vegas, drive to San Diego, but I was really happy to be there, really impressed with the setup. It's known, I think, if you're a media person, for being a pretty good bowl game, and I understand that after going through it. I thought everything was really great.
All right. Cool. Okay. Crappy game. Got to move on from that. You know what happened at midnight earlier today, Connor? Well, on
Portal.
the East Coast, the damn portal opened again. So people don't understand, they changed the portal window this year, so it's only one window, 2 weeks in early January. Guys, for the last couple of weeks since the season ended, have declared that they're going to enter the portal, but now they're actually can officially put their name in the database and officially be in the NCAA Transfer Portal. That's when you're supposed to be able to be contacted by other teams for the first time. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Obviously, there's a lot of tampering and stuff going on with this, but yeah. What have been your takes so far since the portal opened? Any surprises or anything on the USC side you wanted to discuss?
I don't think any surprises on the USC side so far. Some of the guys who remain unsigned, I'd be a little nervous about if Jade Abasiri chooses not to come back and enter his name into the portal, that would be a concern for me, especially after losing Devin Tompkins. If Alex Graham, who for the most part, when he was healthy, looked really promising this year, and I think has a very bright future. If he doesn't re-sign and he enters the portal, that would be concerning. What needs to happen for USC, Ryan, is they got to hire this new defensive coordinator, whoever it is, and get everything in order so then they can pitch to these guys in the portal and pitch to the guys in the current roster, hey, we are doing this. This is our staff for next year. Like right now with all the unknowns at USC, how can you possibly recruit guys to come outside of, if they're on offense, you're playing under Lincoln Riley, but how can you recruit defensive guys right now with everything that's up in the air outside of writing a blank check, which I don't think is in their best interest. You want to be financially responsible. You can't just hand out money like it's nothing. There's budgets, of course. So that's kind of where I start. And then in terms of the guys outside USC who have entered, especially on defense, I see a lot of players who I think could help USC. So they're interested in that Iowa State cornerback. It sounds like he's going to visit USC tomorrow. He also has visits lined up to Notre Dame and another team. I just think you can get guys who can help, and they might not be crazy expensive. Like you can go and you don't necessarily have to get the top of the line guys. I hope they got a few of those, but there's just a lot of value from what I've seen so far. So we'll see what they do, and we'll see how the defensive staff ends up shaking out, because they need to make those hires to be able to recruit some of these guys. But I hope they add some players, because I think they need to. And we just see in the playoff how important these transfer portal guys are. Makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, no, I think they need to get some players from the portal as well. That's one of the comments, and a lot of the comments in the chat. There were a lot of people live today. So Friday afternoon, thank you guys for joining us live on YouTube. Michael Brown said, I'm not all broken up about Lynn leaving at all. We have no idea whether he knows how to properly evaluate defensive talent at this level. He seems more so like an NFL guy, not a developer. Do you think that's fair criticism? We saw at UCLA, he had a lot of success, but that was an experienced team. This was a younger, more like a talented, younger team that just didn't seem to put it together.
I totally get the comment. I don't know if I'm willing to have a hot take one way or the other on that, because he was just at USC only for 2 years. So you look at like a guy like Desmond Stevens, who had his struggles at USC this past year, but I think in the future he could be pretty good. So he's a guy who Lynn developed, but of course had some problems. I get it though, because when the UCLA defensive front was at its best a couple of years ago, they had a lot of really good players. And so with Lynn, he really valued the more experienced guys, a lot of the guys who already had done a lot of development, like a Bishop Fitzgerald, like a Kamari Ramsey, who was at UCLA the year before Lynn got there. That to me, like I get the comment on that, but I also think too, I'm seeing a lot of USC fans like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Remember how bad the defense was before he got to USC. He did a nice job of doing what he was asked to do, which is make that unit competent, especially in the first year. Now, this past season, were they elite? Did they take that next step? No. But I think sometimes you can get kind of lost in like, not everything is linear. You're not going to get better every year. And sometimes with the fans, it's like, oh, this guy didn't know what he was doing. We're going to go get someone better. And I like when guys enter the portal at USC, it's the same thing. Oh, we'll just get someone better. It's like sometimes the known is better than the unknown. So
yeah,
we'll see when the dust settles. But I just want to make sure that people acknowledge like what he was brought in to do, what he did. Like I give him credit for turning around a USC defense that was in a terrible spot when he got there.
I think that's all true. And I think USC, I mean, they were so bad on defense, and in 2024, significant improvement. But then you also put a significant investment into the roster and a significant investment into Danton Lynn, who Penn State tried to hire. Once he became one of the highest paid coordinators in the country, now if you're Danton Lynn, yeah, you take whatever they're going to pay you. Then I think the expectations raised to have a defense that's probably more talented than the year before, but stayed the same or got worse. I think that was disappointing, and he was paid like an elite defensive coordinator, right or wrong, and they didn't have elite defensive coordinator results. And I think that's why some of the fans are kind of upset about that.
And that makes perfect sense. Who are the elite players, though? Outside of Kamari Ramsey, I don't really think they had too many elite guys. Bishop Fitzgerald was an All-American. That's
Yeah.
Lynn's bread and butter at safety. But when you look at the USC defense this year, if you're an opposing team, who's the guy you're like, oh, I want that guy on my team? I don't really know who outside of Ramsey or Fitzgerald in the back end would fit that description. Eric Gentry kind of had a backslide a little bit, so maybe he'd be one of them. But that doesn't give him a total pass, because why did Eric Gentry backslide? Why weren't some of those other position groups better? Why did they decide to go with inexperienced linebackers alongside Gentry? All very fair criticisms, but like, let's remember, they shut out Iowa in the second half. They shut out Nebraska in the second half. They shut out Northwestern in the second half. They did a nice job against UCLA. Maybe they allowed a field goal to Nebraska and it was UCLA they shut out. But the bottom line is, before Lynn got there, all of these incompetent offenses were going off against USC. Now with Lynn, like, they were at least doing what you would expect them to do, which is play well against bad offenses. Now, is that where USC's defense should be? They probably should have been a little better, but I would just say don't take that for granted, because remember how bad it was the year before. And then you combine that with the fact that they just didn't have a lot of elite guys on the defensive end, and you kind of got what you got. The Notre Dame game plan still befuddles me. I don't know why they did such a poor job against the run. Oregon was able to move the ball on them. But remember, against Oregon, if USC on defense got one more stop in the fourth quarter, USC would have gotten the ball to potentially tie the game. So the defense didn't get a stop. That falls on Lynn, and that game was ugly from a defensive perspective. But I think he really only had one game in his tenure where it's like, what the hell are they doing? And that's the Notre Dame game. And sometimes you just have an off game, and the results outside of that were good. They went from 6-6 to 9-3. They did what they were supposed to do on the road for the most part. Like, the people who are like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, I would just say, hey, like, he was a big part of the turnaround from 6-6 to 9-3. And it wasn't perfect, but it was a hell of a lot better than what you had before.
You know, I would say the 6-6, 9-3 improvement was mostly on the offensive side, that they were so much better and didn't turn the ball over as much. Our pick and stuff says Ramsey backslid too. Yeah, like, and some of the elite players didn't play as good as they played the year before. I think those are some of the things that were concerning about Lynn. Yeah, you know what you got there. Now you have to go out and make a really good hire, someone that's going to work better with Lincoln Riley's offense, whatever it is. You need to have better results than what USC got. And they didn't spare any expense. I mean, they put a lot of resources into not just Danton Lynn, but the entire defensive staff. And I think it's fair for USC fans to expect better. And maybe it's better on the recruiting side. Like, yeah, who was like the superstars? The guys you knew didn't play as well as they did the year before, which is troubling. The young, talented guys that you thought were going to take step forwards were just kind of like good at sometimes and making mistakes. I needed to see the defense just get better this season, Connor, and it didn't. And I think that's concerning. I'm not blaming it all on Lynn or not having the players or working with Riley, but something didn't work. The whole thing needed to work better when you improve the talent, more experience, you have Lynn's system, all of that. And it didn't click like the way it needed to.
The Illinois game was bad too, so I shouldn't say he had one stick. There were two. And with Ramsey, yeah, I mean, the decision to play him at nickel was Lynn's. But remember, like, they thought Prophet Brown and Alex Graham were going to be those guys, and then they both go down in the summer and don't end up playing at all for Brown, and then not until the end of the year for Graham. And then they tried other nickels. They tried Kevin Longstreet at one point, and then that didn't work. So they just said, look, Kamari, you're going to be the nickel. And I think that kind of limited his superpowers a little bit. But Lynn was just like, I'm sick of getting burned at this spot. I'm just going to put someone there who I know I can count on. And then we have Bishop Fitzgerald. We have other safeties who can play, like a Christian Pierce. So I don't know if it was Ramsey backsliding. I think it was more him just playing in a different position. And then with Eric Gentry, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think not having a lot of experience around Gentry made it so he had to cover for some of the other linebackers, where in years past he could be a freelancer when he was on an All-American pace a couple of years ago before he had those concussions. Like Easton Mascarenas-Arnold could do his thing, and Mason Cobb could do his thing, and then Gentry was like that hybrid edge rusher, kind of the freelance guy, and he really excelled in that role. He wasn't able to do that as much this past year, and why was that? Because of some of the personnel stuff. So I'm with you though. Like he was paid a ton, and they didn't get elite results. But I mean, we're watching these college football playoff games, Ryan. Like some of the elite guys on defense just really stand out, and I didn't think USC had many, if any, of those.
No, and that's true. But also, you look at Indiana, and they just tackle when the ball carrier gets near them. They bring him to the ground, and fundamentals, coaching, development. I think they're doing a much better job than. Yes, maybe you don't have a bunch of guys that are going to go in the first round on that defense, but man, they play as a unit. And when they get a hold of somebody, they bring them down. They don't let 4 tackles get broken on a final play that's going to end the game. That's the game where everybody makes the tackle. So, yeah, did they have like superstars that are going to be NFL guys? No, but I think they could have, what they have, 16 missed tackles or something in this game? Like I think that's something that you need to avoid. Like they had enough talent where you don't need to have that many missed tackles and kind of give up some of those big plays that they had been giving up most of the season.
I compared Lincoln Riley to Kurt Cignetti last week, so I'm kind of going against what I was saying. But I don't know I think Indiana, comparing USC to Indiana, comparing anyone to Indiana, it's unprecedented what they're doing. I would kind of throw that one out because they just have this crazy winning formula, and they do have some good players on defense, but I think they're such an exception.
Yeah, I'm not saying just Indiana in general, but just if you watch Indiana play defense, like they're tackling. They could lose games and be good at tackling. I think, USC could lose games. If they were good at tackling, I think you could excuse some of the stuff. But man, the tackling was poor, and I'm not going to blame that on they don't have any superstars. Like regular players, normal players, decent players can still tackle. And for whatever reason, that wasn't working for USC.
This year in the bowl game. I mean, Lynn didn't coach the bowl game.
Right. Did they forget it? Did they forget everything they taught them in the last or whatever? I don't know. Yeah. All right. So that's kind of disappointing. We'll see what's going on in the portal. It just opened today. Crazy news and stuff. Anything else that we want to get to before we jump into questions? We have a lot of people in the chat. Thank you for watching us live. Oh, we got 300 people watching. Nice. We just did an impromptu show. We got all these people jumping in. I got all your questions started in the chat. We got a couple other ones to get to. Anything else you want to chat about, Connor, before we jump into questions?
Just real quick, we got a lot of questions with Lynn, why did it seem like he wanted out? And I think the answer there, just based on some people I've talked to, it seemed like he didn't necessarily see eye to eye with Chad Bowden on a few things. And remember, Lynn was pursued by Penn State a year ago, and he decided to stay. He's pursued by Penn State this year. He decides to leave. What's the difference? Bowden was here this year. He wasn't here the year before. That's not exactly why he left, but I think the structure and the alignment within the building changed, and Lynn didn't like that. He didn't take to that. I think sometimes Bowden, the influence that he had in that building frustrated Lynn, and so when USC brings in the number 1 recruiting class, which Bowden did a great job of doing that, and they win 9 games, it seems like a good spot for a defensive coordinator to build on what he did the year before. Why would he want out? It's because of the alignment stuff. It's because he wasn't happy with some of the influence that Bowden and that personnel staff had in that building compared to the year before. And this wasn't him being forced out, Lynn, by USC, which I think some people are like, oh, they didn't even want him anyway. No, they wanted him. The difference was things changed in that building, and that led to him seeking other opportunities. He was potentially going to go to Michigan at one point if Michigan had hired a different head coach. So it wasn't like it was Penn State or bust at times. This guy wanted to leave, and it was because the situation changed in the building.
All right. Well, let's do this before we jump into our break. I want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's. Just talked with them. We're going to do it again for another year as the partnership with Trader Joe's and the Peristyle Podcast. We're really happy just because obviously it's a huge brand, and for have a show like ours to have them as a partner has been a real blessing for us. I know they've enjoyed it. I enjoy talking about Trader Joe's whenever we get an opportunity. I don't know if you saw, Connor, I did a seafood boil over for New Year's Eve, and that was a lot of fun. And went to Trader Joe's and bought a lot of the ingredients and was able to put it together. And I saw some Southerners, Connor, that they were doing it. And so, you can put water and boil that. You season it all up and everything. But orange juice. So I bought the pulpless Trader Joe's orange juice, and I started with that. Actually, you can put a lot of seasoning in, and it kind of cuts the flavor a little bit and adds a little citrusy to it. But I had a lot of fun with that. So headed over to Trader Joe's to pick up all my ingredients. We put red potatoes in there and some sausage and, of course, the seafood and stuff. And it was yellow onions, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing that. But I enjoy talking about Trader Joe's every week. And it's funny when people come up to me and say something about Trader Joe's. So I just want to thank them. And, I'm glad they're going to be on for another year as partners with the Peristyle Podcast.
Shout out to Trader Joe's, the best sponsor there is. Yeah. I mean, not too many shows are sponsored by Trader Joe's. It's pretty good.
They're not. Yeah. Just us and the Audible. But that's it. That's the only ones they do. So thank you, Trader Joe's. We love you. And we're going to be back in a minute, everybody, talking more USC football. All righty, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in, joining us. Sort of short notice if you're watching us live on YouTube. Thank you for doing that. We a few hundred people, 300 people online. So thanks for that. Obviously, people wanted to talk about what's going on with USC. There's a lot going on with USC, and there's a bunch of questions that are in the chat. We'll get to those. There's some other ones I want to get to as well. We had a voicemail come in, and it's our buddy Curtis, Moreno Valley, which I just drove through on the way back from the desert. So you drive through Moreno Valley right before Riverside. But let me play this one for you, Connor.
Hey, Ryan, I just checked Indiana's recruiting for the past 2 seasons. This year's class has 2 4-stars. All the rest are 3 stars. And last year's recruiting class has 2 4-stars. All the rest are 3 stars or unrated. How can they be so good? Sounds like coaching. All the 5 stars and 4 stars we have, and we're still where we are.
So it's Curtis. Yeah, it's tough to compare to Indiana because Curtis. Here, let me play you what. This is what we play on the Podcast of Champions for him.
He knows the score. He gets the women. Cignetti kills.
Yeah, he's a stone cold killer of a coach. So he's the exception, not the rule. Like you can't really compare to him.
Well, and their quarterback is a transfer who won the Heisman. Roman Hemby, their transfer running back, was at Maryland the year before. They had a transfer receiver from Michigan. They've also nailed the portal, and that is a bigger story than the last 2 classes that they've had under Cignetti not being great. They have done an excellent job of going after guys in the portal who maybe weren't necessarily that highly ranked out of high school, and then doing an exceptional job of evaluating them and getting them into the building, and combine that with the coaching that those guys are getting. And yeah, like I said earlier, and like you just echoed, Ryan, they're the exception. I wouldn't say just do what Indiana does. No one's doing what Indiana does.
No, and he brought in as Fatback, a whole bunch of players from James Madison. I think we're going to see Penn State do the same thing from Iowa State. So yeah, those are kind of different situations, but obviously it's a very, very well coached team. Even with the players they brought in, they don't spend as much money as like at Ohio State or in Oregon. They don't have the amount of NFL guys that like Ohio State or Oregon have, or Alabama, and they beat all of them. So he's just an amazing coach, and you got to tip your cap to him because he's doing an awesome job. Frank in Sacramento, this comes up a lot, Connor. I don't know where it came from, but will Deuce Robinson come back to USC for 2026?
No, he re-signed with Florida State.
Yeah. So I don't know what that, like, people think, I don't know. He had a good, like, Zachariah Branch had a really good year. They didn't play that well at USC the year before, but Deuce Robinson had a good year at Florida State. Zachariah Branch had a good year at maybe just needed a change of scenery. I'm not sure, but yeah, that was a different thing. Oh, we got a super chat. Thank you. Cammie, what are you hearing about Longstreet and the other unsigned players? If you want to jump in line, just do a super chat, and then go right to the top.
Longstreet, it sounds like he's going to make his decision soon. That one could go either way. And it sounds like Will Stein in Kentucky has been kind of poking around a little bit. And if he did enter the portal, Kentucky might be a destination for him. So that gives you an idea about the tampering that's afoot when he's not even in. And there's been back channel communication there. I heard before the bowl game that Jade Abasiri might transfer, but then USC named him a captain. He spoke before the game. He started. Not really sure the latest with him. So there was a rumor that he was looking to leave. Maybe that changed because he was a captain for this game. I'm not really sure, but he's still unsigned. And then Alex Graham is the other one where if Danton Lynn had gone to Michigan, maybe does Graham follow him because he's from that area? I'm not really sure, but they really are pushing for Graham to sign his deal, and he hasn't. You can read into that whatever you want. I think they got to keep working, keep recruiting him, and keep doing what they need to do to bring him back into the fold. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure the other unsigned guys who it would be big if they lost or if USC lost him, but those three are the ones that I am looking for them to re-sign ASAP.
We have so many photos. So, like, I've got all these photos in front of me. I'm, like, trying to find – I kind of do it by game, and now that games are done, I'm going to, like – and there's a whole bunch of guys that aren't going to play anymore, so I'm going to have to reorganize my photos. It's our B-roll when we're doing these shows on YouTube. Let's go to another this was a text message we got. Marcel in the Inland Empire. Is it possible for our defense to hit as hard as Miami? We used to during the Pete Carroll era, but it appears even with Danton Lynn, we have gotten very, very soft.
I just think it comes down to personnel. Miami's recruited at an elite level for years. They have a ton of money, so they do well in the portal. That Keontae Scott kid who's from San Diego started at Auburn, had the pick 6 in that game. USC was interested in him, but they didn't even get a sniff because Miami, whether it was money or just the situation, ended up being a way better spot. That's a slot corner. Imagine if he was your nickel all year and then Kamari Ramsey could play safety. You just need really good players. And why does Miami hit so hard? Part of it is because they have that great defensive coordinator from Minnesota. Part of it is the talent that they have. I don't think it's only a philosophical thing. You also have to have good players. And a lot of those guys are really experienced too, where Ruben Bain will go to the NFL after this year. He's a third-year guy. USC relied on a lot of young players this year too, which I think it's hard for a young player to be physical sometimes because they're just inexperienced and they're younger.
Yeah. Stephen Poway emailed in, the most aggravating thing about the loss to TCU is how they lost, collapsing again in the final minutes of the game, feeling like 2024 all over again. Opt-outs happen on both sides of the ball, and I don't want to give the Trojans a break on that front. His question is, can we really consider this a, quote, improved season when the bowl games resemble everything that was bad about the 2024 season? What a horrible finish. Stephen Poway.
I just go back to 6-6 to 9-3. That's all you need to look at. Last year, does everyone leave last year going, oh, USC went 8-5 last year? No, they went 7-5. This year they went 9-3. The bowl game the year before they went, they went 6-6 last year. The year before they went 7-5. You just gotta throw them away, and it's a frustrating finish. I acknowledge that, but I don't know why so many fans are putting so much stock into that game. It doesn't make sense to me.
I get the point, and maybe that's a better way of kind of clarifying what I was talking about when we were discussing this earlier is if you looked at the way USC lost those games before going 6-6, where you had leads and you blew them, that's sort of like this PTSD thing that came back like, oh, are you reverting back to what you were doing then? I get it. You can't put that much stock in the bowl game. Would you rather go 9-3 and lose your bowl game or 6-6 and win your bowl game? But the way they lost it, it just gives a feel for what the previous season was like. So I think that's why some people are like, oh, are you going back to what that was again? Like you were supposed to move on from that to sort of show that side of the team again. I think that's where the concern is.
So the year before, they blew all those games. This year, they blew the Illinois game. They had a lead at the end. They couldn't hold it. They did take a third quarter lead on Notre Dame, but then gave up the big touchdown. I just think, look at this past season. Did this past season's team have a really hard time of holding on to leads, or was it just what usually happens where you blew one fourth quarter lead, you blew one third quarter lead against a better team on the road, the rest of them you were able to hang on? Like, I just think year to year in college football, even if you have the same defensive staff for the most part, it's so different with the portal and with graduation and guys only being able to play 4 or 5 years. Like, I think the issues that plagued the 2025 team were pretty different than the 2024 one. So like, them blowing that bowl game doesn't make me think, oh, they're back to 2024 all over again. All the progress they made is gone, especially with all the opt-outs. I just see it completely differently.
All right. Look at that. Super chat. Thanks, Cammie. So what's up with the DC hire? Is it an either or between PK and Henny? Sense of timing? Who is actually making the decision? And what would you do if you were making the call? There's a lot there.
Yeah, a ton.
But thank you for the $10. We appreciate it. Yeah.
So based on what Gerard had in the war room today, like, why is this taking so long? My educated guess would be if they wanted to bring in Pete Kwiatkowski, but then that means Eric Henderson may not be here. They're probably trying to figure out how they can keep both of those guys. But I am in no position of saying if they get Pete Kwiatkowski that Henderson is 100% gone. I don't really know where the negotiations are. It seems like it was Pete Kwiatkowski earlier on. I don't even know which other candidates outside of the hot board that we have would make sense. I think the Gary Patterson stuff is bogus, and I don't think he is in the mix. But, like, why don't they have their coordinator today when they had all this heads up that Lynn was leaving? Well, a good idea might be, like, they are worried if they hire someone, they might lose Eric Henderson, and that would be a big loss because of all that he's done for recruiting on the defensive line. So I think that's kind of where things might stand, but I don't know, Ryan. Why do you think this is taking so long?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't help to have the bowl game that you're preparing for as well. I'm not exactly sure, but there could be, trying to keep people on the staff that you like. But I think when you go out and hire somebody like Pete Kwiatkowski, or, if you're someone like that that's an experienced defensive coordinator, you kind of have to let them do their thing. And you can say, like, hey, we'd really like you to keep this guy or that guy. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to make a defensive coordinator hire, that's the important role. And then you let them kind of pick who they want under them. I think we've seen that at different positions for head coaches, we're like, oh, we want to hire you as head coach, but we want to keep all these guys. And the head coach is like, no, I don't want that. I want to do my guys. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think you're right. I think that's probably where it is, but I don't know for sure if that's like what the holdup is or what's going on. But I think it would be a really good hire. He's had some really elite defenses. It's not like Texas had a bad defense this last year. I think it would be an improvement over what USC had. Danton Lynn, I mean, he might be one of the best defensive coordinators out there. We don't know. He's only been a college DC for 3 years. Didn't have really good results these last two, but, improved on what USC had before. I think that would be a potential improvement on what USC has now.
Would you rather have them bring in Kwiatkowski, but you lose Henderson, you maybe lose Belk, you lose some key players, or would you rather have them promote from within with Belk and Henderson as co-DCs and you keep all the players?
No, give me the experienced guy that's done it. Like USC doesn't need you're going to promote someone from a bad defense or a meh defense. Like, it wasn't like a great defense. If the defensive line was elite, then maybe, but the defensive line wasn't elite. The linebackers certainly weren't. Nothing was great there. So I don't think promoting from within is the way to go. If you're going to get a really experienced defensive coordinator like that, bring him in and let him do whatever he wants. And it's like your job, fix the defense. We'd like you to keep this guy. If you don't want to, don't, So yeah, that's the way I would go. I don't know. What do you feel about it?
It's tough without knowing exactly who would leave, especially guys in the 2026 class, and then in 2025, like Jakeem Stewart and Floyd Boucard, two guys who look like pillars of the defensive line moving forward. And Ryan, we were talking earlier about legitimate reasons to criticize Lincoln Riley. So here's what I got on this whole search. When Chad Bowden came in, why was that hire so necessary? Because USC had recruited so poorly. They were navigating the new era so poorly. They needed someone to come in like a Bowden and just take over control. Why? Because Lincoln Riley wasn't an effective recruiter in the new era. And so you have Bowden come in and he does his job. He gets the number 1 class in 2026. He's doing what he was brought in here to do. But because he has this influence in the building, he pisses off Danton Lynn, the old defensive coordinator, who ideally would have just been back and you'd keep going with what you had. So now Lynn's gone because you had to bring in Bowden because Riley was an ineffective recruiter. Now you're looking for a new defensive coordinator. If you bring in an outside guy, you might lose Eric Henderson, who's a huge recruiter, and some guys on the team who you want to have back. If you promote from within, you're getting an inexperienced defensive coordinator in Henderson and Belk, who's only called defense a few years at Houston. Why are they in this spot? It all goes back to Lincoln Riley not getting up to speed with NIL quick enough. The school is to blame for that as well, but I always have said this. If Riley was leading the charge on NIL, they would have been in a better position. It's unfortunate, but the reality is they're in this position because of him, and that's why they're stuck between this rock and a hard place here. If you bring in Pete Kwiatkowski, you might lose some important guys. If you hire from within, you might not be as good as you probably should be. It's because Lincoln Riley wasn't a great recruiter that they're in this position. And when we talk about is he the right man for the job moving forward, this is a massive strike against him.
Yeah. I thought everyone was saying you were holding water for Lincoln Riley earlier. Now you just threw him just trashed him for this. Trojan First says, Pete Kwiatkowski recruited Henny for Texas. Why wouldn't he want him at USC? I didn't know that he did that, or maybe he did. I'm not sure.
I know he was looking at Belk at Texas, and then they went with someone else. I forget who, but Belk was linked to Texas. I don't know if Henny was or not. I mean, Henny, what's kind of interesting with him is he's just an LA guy, so yeah. You can have defensive coordinator aspirations, but he's been in LA for so long. I kind of feel like the gig he has is good, but hey, I'm not inside his brain. Maybe he feels like if they bring in another outside defensive coordinator, it should be his role. And sometimes you can't overcome that, but I don't know. I feel like he's in a pretty good spot. He gets paid a ton of money. If he did go to another school who paid him more, that's always an allure, but I feel like he's in a pretty good spot at USC, but what do I know?
Trojan Fight, is it possible Henderson might leave if he doesn't get the DC job?
Yes. That Gerard had something in the war room on that. That's possible.
Yeah. And, do you want him to be the defensive coordinator? I think USC needs an experienced defensive coordinator, not someone that you really like that's recruited well, that you want to give a chance to. I think you're past the give a chance to. For me, 2026, one of the things I wrote in the war room, it's playoff or bust. And do you want to trust the defense to someone that hasn't called a defense before outside of the bowl game where you lost? No. I'm not putting that on Henny for being thrust into that. But, I think you need an experienced defensive coordinator.
Especially now that Notre Dame's not on the schedule. Sorry, you need to make the playoff next year.
Or bust. Yeah. No excuses. Doesn't matter. Opt out, whatever. No excuses. You want to accuse anyone carrying water? I'm telling you, the only satisfactory outcome for 2026 USC football is to make the college football playoffs. That's the only satisfactory outcome. Anything short of that is a failure. So I'll say that today on January 2nd, 2026. I will say that for no matter what happens between now and then, that's what I will say. So You think of being unfair? Whatever, but don't say I'm holy water for this program. I'm telling you, the only satisfactory outcome is a playoff appearance.
Especially if they go to 16. But even if they don't, no longer having Notre Dame, if you can't go 10-2 in year 5 with all the resources that USC has, I'm with you. Then I don't think you're the right guy for the job. What's going to be tricky, Ryan, is if they go 9-3 again, and then it's like, well,
not tricky. Not tricky. I told you, there's a line in the sand. Make the playoffs or don't. I don't care what it is. Just make it. If you don't make it, there was a failure. 9-3, failure.
Do you think
have to make the playoffs.
Does the administration feel that way?
I think the amount of resources that they've been piling into this program, and it's significant. It's not like year 5 can't be you're close. It has to be you do it. Like you figure it out. You're getting paid enough money that you make it work. Like 9-3 is not an improvement. It was this year. It won't be next year. And you don't have Notre Dame on the schedule. So this is my opinion. I kind of, I feel like that's the way the general consensus is going to be, but I don't think there's any sort of like, well, 9-3, it's like, that's not good enough. That's a failure of a season. And so you've had enough resources, enough coaches, enough support staff, enough players getting paid a ton of money on all accounts. Now go win. You can't ask for anything else. That's my opinion on that. Frank in Sacramento emailed us right after the TCU game during instant analysis. Shotgun said that Danton Lynn's dismissal as defensive coordinator the day of the game was, quote, because someone got their feelings hurt. Can you expand on that?
We shared everything that we know about the situation. Maybe it was because there was a leak from inside, and that might have pissed people off. But that leak happened way back when, like, the reporting, that leak happened the day before when it came out that Lynn had told USC staff members that he was leaving. So maybe that led to someone being upset, and then they sent him home. But I don't know. I guess that's probably a better question for a Shotgun on the Helium Boys. That would be the only thing I could think of, right?
I think, yeah. I mean, I do feel like there's, like I said before, I feel like the exit, it could have been done better, and then people, and we don't know all the details. People get pissed off of certain things, how this went down, and then it's just like, okay, you're out. I think it could have, probably been handled better all around. We'll try to find out as many details as we can. But yeah, it just seemed like one of those situations that, what is going on here? And that's not what you needed going into this game. Like, you needed things to be more like, this is a business trip. And that just turned it into fiasco before the game even started, where the announcers are talking about, hey, Danton Lynn, who you just heard from, is now a lot call. It's like, what? What changed? So yes, that's not what USC needed for sure. We got another super chat.
Wow, Cammie is paying my check this month. Thank you,
Cammie. Thank you. This is so sweet of you. Thank you very much. If USC has a meh portal, would that change your opinion about Bowden? It's clear we got the number 1 class because of the money we spent on it, and that cost us if that cost us in the portal, how is that strategy defensible if 26 is playoff or bust?
I think that's a great question, because it seems like they're operating like they're not under a ton of pressure for next season, when how can they not be operating under a lot of pressure for next season? And Bowden, I think he was brought in to do what he said, which is major in high school recruiting, and minor in the portal. And that's what he's doing. But like, he joined USC for the 4th year of Lincoln Riley after 2 very disappointing seasons the year before. So like, I think the timelines are a little misaligned, where Bowden, in theory, would have more time, but aren't Riley and Bowden connected at the hip? Don't they have to be if Riley gets fired? What head coach is going to come in if Jen Cohen says, here's your general manager? Like, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the defensive coordinator. You need to bring in your own people. So I think Bowden is doing a good job of executing what he was brought in to do, but should he do more in the portal? If they have a meh portal, I don't know how good they'll be next year. Like 10-2 is possible for sure, but I think you got to hit this portal out of the park because you should be under a lot of pressure. Like it's win or bust. It's playoff or bust. And if they do have that meh portal, like the commenter said, that shows me that they don't really feel like they're under a whole lot of pressure, or maybe they just misallocated some resources and they went way too big on 2026. I don't know. There seems to be kind of a misalignment there to me. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I feel like they were setting us up for don't expect a whole lot from the portal, which and you're like,
hello.
You kind of need that. But I don't think USC was recruiting like meh. And then Chad Bowden comes in and they're like, oh, then now they're getting the local guys and stuff. And I get it. They put more resources into it. There was the whole, preload at the roster before July, before the House settlement kicked in. But there's an organization to it. There's a lot that goes into just paying players. USC was paying guys, and I don't think they were doing it in the most efficient way. Seemed like they've got more efficient, but they were able to put this class together. It was number one. They were able to stay number one, where all of us kind of thought like, they'll probably like drop down a little bit. So you have to give Chad Bowden credit for that. Like they were not recruiting at a top 10 level, and then they get the number one class after you hire him. Now it's his first like real portal window, and he's told you like we're going to minor in the portal. But Oregon didn't bring in a ton of guys last year, but like Connor pointed out, like the guys they brought in hit. Maybe you only bring in 6, 7, 8 guys. I don't know, but you need to bring in some ballers and some guys that are going to hit. So we'll see what happens. But if they have a meh portal class, I don't think you can take away from, it seems like they put their resources into the recruiting class, which if you want to win right now, and I think I think they need to win right now, you probably needed to lean a little bit more on the portal too, because I don't know how much time you have to like build up a couple of great recruiting classes in a row. That it's year 5 for Lincoln Riley. It's not for Chad Bowden. It's his, year 1. But yeah, I think this is a situation where you still need to make some sort of splash in the portal, even though it's going to be a minor and not a major.
I'm with you 100%. If they can do what Oregon did, easier said than done. But Oregon hit on like either 8 or 9 guys who were at such an elite level, and they're in the last 4. That's kind of what you got to do.
Yeah, Trojan Fight says, I would have taken a lesser-ranked recruiting class if it meant we were getting elite guys in the portal. Texas was ranked 8th in recruiting and still on elite guys like Cam Coleman, yeah. No,
I agree. That would be my strategy. And the 2026 class, doesn't it kind of seem like it's like year 1 of a rebuild a little bit, and then you bring in a new defensive coordinator, and it's like, okay, that resets the clock. Like, no, it's year 5.
Yeah, it is year 5. I did the cha-ching. I was going to say, Cammy, you're slacking, but Cammy also has a super chat too. But from Oscar DeGrouch, hasn't USC given jobs to underserved coaches just because they're nice and everyone likes the biggest issues for the past 15 years? I'm not sure what he's saying there, but
they hire people because they're nice and they don't deserve it.
That was Clay Helton, right? He was nice. He was not getting you in trouble. I think that's the main reason they hired him, because their other coaches were getting them in trouble. I don't think they're hiring just nice coaches at this point, Oscar.
No, I think his point is that would be like elevating Belk and Henderson, and Kwiatkowski is what they should do. And that makes sense to me. I just am fearful if Kwiatkowski comes in, I don't think there would be a mass exodus, but if Henderson leaves, Belk leaves, those guys are responsible for a lot of guys in 2026. If Nua goes to BYU, he's close with Fountain. If you restart this whole defensive staff, you're not going to bring back everyone. And if it is on the worst case scenario side, you lose a ton of guys. Then what good does that do? If you have a coach with no players, you're in trouble.
Yeah, no, then you do have to hit the portal. But then you would have more money to spend, because if a bunch of those guys leave, that you had money allocated to them. Yeah, we'll see. Another, Cammy's just pulling out the wallet. Hypothetical. You can only keep one moving forward, Lincoln or Bowden. Who do you keep?
Who's done a better job at what they were asked to do? Number 1 recruiting class is what Bowden was asked to do. But if I say Bowden and then Riley leaves, what head coach are you getting that is going to say, yeah, this guy's going to be my general manager? It just doesn't work like that. So I think the answer has to be Riley, because if I'm keeping him, then I'm assuming that he's gotten better. And if Riley doesn't have a good year next year and they go 9-3, 8-4, and you make a change, like, then I'm taking none of them. So I kind of think it's either it's Riley and Bowden or nothing. And just Bowden by himself doesn't make any sense. That's just not how this works.
No, yeah, like he's done a great job, but you have Lincoln. Like Lincoln Riley's the one that has Heisman trophies and college football playoff appearances. No, not at USC yet, but I think as far as his resume is a lot deeper than what Chad Bowden's is, and I think you need both of them. But I think it's hard to have, like, if you keep Chad Bowden and then hire Clay Helton as your head coach, like, it doesn't matter. So you need, it's got to be a symbiotic relationship. You need a trinity. You need the AD, you need the DC, and you need the head coach. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird one. I wouldn't say like pick one or the other. All right, let's go to Joe. Why is USC not linked to the top defensive linemen or top linebackers in the portal? I guess we've kind of talked about that already, but
great question. The early links see USC involved with some receivers, some defensive backs, some lower rated linebackers. I think it's going to be a situation where maybe they get one, maybe two, like, premier transfer guys, but I don't know how much money they have left to spend, Ryan. They shelled out a ton of money in that 2026 class. They've shelled out a lot of money in retention. I think, like, retaining guys is the first priority. The 2026 class was the second priority. The portal is now the third priority, and we're going to see that play out here where they'll get some guys, but I don't think they're going to be in on the elite of the elite because they're going to be priced out of those.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. He also had a question. Do you think USC loses a coach on the staff? I heard Chad Savage might be gone. So the defensive side could be, but
the defensive side, there will be changes, it sounds like, especially with Sean Nua being linked to BYU. On the offensive side, it wasn't Savage, maybe linked to Kansas State at one point. I haven't heard anything on him. I'm not really sure where things stand with him, but it's the offseason. Crazy stuff happens. You lose coaches all the time. So would I be shocked if anyone left? No, but it seems like there's going to be a lot more changes on the defensive side than the offensive side right now.
That's what I would expect, most of them. Also, another comment, the real eye on sports. How many times did the offense throw to the middle of the field? Seems like every throw is outside the hash marks or up the sidelines.
They threw to Nella Tupou in the middle a couple times. They love that tight end.
Starting the season, just starting the game, yeah.
Yeah, one of them he wasn't really paying attention. And then Hines, he's your wide receiver, like your outside receiver. So a lot of his stuff, just because of where he lines up, will be to the outside. I don't know. I don't really think them not throwing over the middle was a problem in that game. But maybe if they could do it again, would they throw more over the middle? Not sure. But that's not something when I look back like, oh, they weren't doing that. I don't know. That's something I really noticed. I don't know if you noticed it, Ryan.
No, I didn't really either, but I can look at it a little more when on the rewatch. Trojan Fight read a report that one of the players was sent home for violation of team rules. Are we able to be told who that was?
I don't want to get on anyone's bad side, so I'm not saying it. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so maybe that'll come out. We did put a hint of that in the war room this morning. If you're not a subscriber over at uscfootball.com, check it out, and we'll see. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that for you. Let's go back. Cammie, spending a Christmas bonus here. Connor, you acknowledged that Lincoln's smoke was real in terms of him looking elsewhere. Any sense of why?
Yeah, because he's been neutered. Chad Bowden has a ton of power in that building. Jen Cohen didn't hire him. Why did they get rid of Benny Wiley? If it was up to Lincoln Riley, I think Benny Wiley would still be at USC. If it was up to Lincoln Riley, I don't know if Chad Bowden would be at USC right now. It's because he does not have as much power in that building as he used to. And if that Baylor job opened up, if that AD could have kept it in his pants and stayed there and they fired Dave Aranda, I don't know if it's fair to say there's a good chance Riley is at Baylor, but there's certainly a chance that he was looking to get out.
Yeah. But I did hear more recently, too, that they seem to, as far as inside the building, there was a more symbiotic relationship. There was, I don't think there was real interest from Riley's side in the Florida job. And I think the other way around, that Florida, there was some interest there. So it seemed like Riley's kind of, come to terms with, hey, let's make this work, that's something you'd want to see in the offseason, more of a symbiotic relationship between all the parties involved that have power and need to build the roster and win games and all that stuff. And I think it would have helped to win this bowl game, too, and give itself more momentum. But I do feel like Riley seems a little bit more focused now. We'll see how much that impacts things. Jeff has a question. Is there any truth to Lynn claiming the USC players weren't smart enough to grasp his defense?
So there's a rumor going around that Lynn told a parent of a recruit that the players on the team were dumb, or some of them didn't understand the scheme, and the word that keeps getting thrown around is dumb. Look, I haven't heard anything about that. I don't think that is true for a second. Personally, am I able to say like it's 100% not true? No, I don't even know where this came from, but like we've spent a good amount of time around Lynn, Ryan. Like he is a very nice man.
Yeah.
that he's not that hothead coach who maybe would let something slip by mistake. He's very, very measured and very intentional. And this to me reeks of a rumor that is just so far out of the realm of possibility. Just something that I don't even know who would leak it, but just something to make people feel better. Like, oh, he called the players dumb. He had to go. Like, no, that is just not something he would do. And frankly, I'm upset that we even have to talk about it, but I've seen it all over the message boards. Like, give me a break, people. That's just doesn't make any sense. And no, I don't know. I'm sick of talking about it.
Yeah, me too. Sort of like the Gary Patterson stuff. Like, I don't know where that came from, but I don't think that was real either.
Yeah, people are nuts. Like,
Alex. Question. The new DC is going to want to bring in his own coaches. If you could keep one coach on the defensive side, who would it be? Thanks.
I think it has to be Henny, right?
So Eric Henderson. Yeah.
Because who's been the most important recruit for USC of the Riley tenure so far? I mean, it's been Jakeem Stewart. Right? Like maybe Hassan Longstreet could get there, but I mean, he might not even be on the freaking team next year. So, with what Henny's been able to do with Stewart and Boucard and the guys in 2026, like I'd say him, but Belk I think is certainly in second, and you could make an argument for Belk to be number one. The rest of the staff, I don't really think it would matter if they left or stayed. I know Nua's really close with Cam Fountain, so maybe would Fountain opt to leave if Nua ends up leaving to go to BYU, but I think that's something you could overcome.
Yeah. Let's go, Sammy. Pull up here. Question: did Lincoln hint to the bowl game presser he didn't want to hit reset? If he doesn't by bringing in someone else because of his pride, will we all pay the price next year?
I guess
what he's saying.
What does a reset mean?
Yeah, is he?
Like
I'm not sure.
Someone not hiring internally, like bringing an outside candidate out, is that hitting the reset?
I think maybe that's what he's referring to, is like keeping an internal, and not just because you lose Danton Lynn doesn't mean you bring someone new and a whole new staff and everything. Maybe that's what he's referencing. I didn't really get that from the presser, but
yeah,
maybe.
I'm a little confused by the question. I would just say Riley doesn't really he's not leaving any breadcrumbs in his press conferences. He doesn't do that. He's too smart for that. He's pretty good at saying something, but maybe behind the scenes feeling differently about it, like a lot of football coaches are. So
yeah,
I wouldn't read too much into his presser is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And someone in the chat was talking about what an offensive player's parent said, like on a podcast or something. We get it. Like, we talk to a lot of players' parents and stuff as well. It can be great. But I wouldn't take everything that's said from a player's parent as gospel. Just, that's not like, oh, that's what they said. A lot of times you're like, oh, it's like something to do with a tight end, and it was the tight end's parent they were in that meeting. It's like, okay, that's probably what was going on. But yeah, I would just be a little cautionary there sometimes. So, and we love talking to the players' parents and stuff. And most of the time you're talking to them, you're not even trying to talk about football, just kind of other things. But sometimes there's agendas, sometimes there's different things going on. So just I wouldn't take everything as gospel, I would say. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Not trying to like crap on any of the stuff, but like some of the things is like, all right. Well, I think that's about it. That's all the questions we had from the chat. We appreciate everyone jumping in there. Man, we got a lot of people. Oh, looks like we just got another super chat. Man, we got a whole bunch of super chats. This is great. I don't know if you want to guess who this one's from, Connor.
Tammy.
Yes. Are USC's practices less physical than average? If not, any other theories on why they can't manage a field goal to field a good D? Not field goal, sorry. Aren't you kind of expecting Danton to be really good at Penn State?
I can't speak to the practices because we're just not there.
We don't watch them. They don't let us watch. Sua went on a rant saying, let the media back in, like, so we can see what the hell's going on. It's like, yeah.
Because he's media now, so.
Yeah, but also just like, hey, there's some accountability there. Like when we watched Pete Carroll practices, like you got to see what was going on. And yeah, there's some accountability when there's people actually watching what you're doing. We knew like some of the Clay Helton teams when they had a bowl game and they only practiced like 7 times because they had changed a bunch of coaches and stuff. And you're like, you could use 15 practices. You only took 7. Like we knew. And some of that stuff is like, hey, we don't know how we get to go to some bowl practices, but you don't really know how many there are. So if they only practice like 4 times instead of 15, you'd be like, hey, what's going on here? So I think selfishly you want to be in there so you can see more and do a better job reporting for everyone out there. But I think that's also an accountability for the coaches and players too, if media get to watch. And if there's some guy that's killing it, if we watched Kennedy Urlacher just absolutely killing it in practice and was wondering why he wasn't playing, that would be, we can't tell now. But when we see that, there's like a level of accountability there.
You want to know why else they can't field a great defense? In Lincoln Riley's tenure, who has been the best defensive player they've had? I would argue Tuli Pelotu.
Sure.
The first year. And you're telling me you can't get anyone in terms of getting to the quarterback who's even close to him in the following 3 seasons? Like, I also think, look at Miami. Look at Ohio State. Indiana, don't look at them because they've done it differently. But look at Texas Tech. Look at Oregon. Like, all those defenses are really good because they're well coached, but because they have really, really good freaking players. And that is a huge part of it too. Why isn't USC's defense great? They just don't have that many good players.
All right. Well, we'll end it on a positive note there. Oh, we did have a question. Okay, here's what we can tell you. Roger Dodger. Does USC practice? Yeah, well, okay, we know they warm up, and then we leave. So maybe they would just – no, they're practicing. We're there. We're just not allowed to watch when they actually do the practicing part. We can see them stretch and throw the ball around a little, but yeah. And I think, that was one of the things. Are the practices geared towards making the offense better and they don't, maybe on the defensive side? Danton Lynn comes in. He was really highly paid. You'd think he'd have some influence there. He wasn't as experienced, though. He only had 1 year of DC experience, and so maybe he would, rely on Riley's idea. But if you bring in a guy like Pete Kwiatkowski, like he's going to say, this is how we have to practice to make the defenses better. So not someone with that much experience, it might be easier to, if you needed to change some of the elements of how practice goes on, I think having a more experienced defensive coordinator would get that done. I don't know if you feel that's fair, Connor.
I think so too. That makes sense. Like Lincoln Riley, all the fans who don't like him say he doesn't practice the right way. So how could you change that? It would be bringing in an experienced defensive coordinator. So that makes sense to me.
And the people talk about Signetti, he's talked about not practicing that much. He doesn't do super long practices, but he does it very efficiently. He does it really well. I think Pete Carroll was the same way, where they didn't have to go extra long in practice, but it was it was hard. It was competitive. They didn't stand around. There wasn't a lot of standing around. It was like moving. You were going fast between things, between drills. I think he had a good system where he did it. So when you were on that field, you were working, and then you were off. Sometimes people just, you can go to the gym for 3 hours and you're talking to friends and stuff, or you go to the gym for 45 minutes and hit it really hard and get a better workout, So I think some of it's how you do it too. But Cignetti is not known for these crazy long or intense practices, but whatever he does, he's got the secret sauce. He makes it work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to wrap things up. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Connor's got to get over to hoops here, but it was a lot of fun to get back and talking some USC football again. Wishing it was better circumstances than losing in heartbreaking fashion to TCU in the Alamo Bowl. But we appreciate everyone joining in. Hope you stay with us another year. This was my 30th season covering the team. We got our team's intact. So everyone, if you're worried, like Connor, Chris, Shotgun, Gerard, RJ, we're all here. We're all sticking around. So it should be a lot of fun heading into this offseason, and then another 2026, which I say is playoff or bust, but that's just me. But I've been around a long time, so maybe I know what I'm talking about sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes I do. But for Connor Morrissette, I am Ryan Abraham. Hope you guys all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.